The night was quiet, too quiet for Ethan's liking. The road ahead was empty, a long stretch of black asphalt cutting through the forest. His old truck hummed softly, headlights slicing through the fog. It was supposed to be an ordinary drive home after another long shift at the factory, but that night the stars didn't look normal. They seemed alive, blinking, moving, almost watching him. Ethan rubbed his tired eyes and sighed. "Just my imagination," he muttered. He turned up the radio, hoping to stay awake. But the station crackled with static, the voice fading in and out. Then out of nowhere, a sharp light flashed across the sky. It wasn't a shooting star. It moved too fast, too close, leaving behind a glowing trail of green fire. The light shot downward and vanished behind the trees ahead with a loud boom that shook the ground. Ethan slammed the brakes, his heart pounding. What the hell was that? He looked toward the forest, where a thin line of smoke rose against the moonlight. His instincts told him to turn around and go home, but something deep inside whispered that he couldn't ignore it. Curiosity, or maybe fate, pulled him forward. He grabbed his flashlight and stepped out into the cold night air. The forest was silent except for the faint crackling of something burning. As he pushed through the trees, he smelled metal and ozone. Then he saw it, a small crater glowing faintly blue, and inside it, something that didn't belong to Earth. It wasn't a rock. It was a pod, smooth and silver, covered in strange symbols that shimmered like water. The surface hissed softly, still hot from re-entry. Ethan's breath caught as the top slowly opened with a hiss. Inside, curled up and trembling, was a small figure, a child, but not a human one. Her skin was pale blue, almost translucent, and her hair shone silver under the moonlight. Her eyes fluttered open, and Ethan gasped. They weren't human eyes, they were bright and glowing like twin stars. The girl looked terrified. She whispered something in a strange musical language he couldn't understand. Ethan knelt beside her, unsure what to do. She looked weak, frightened, and lost. He could see scratches on her arms, and her breathing was shallow. She reached out with shaking hands, clutching at his sleeve. Her touch was warm, too warm. It sent a strange tingle through his skin. "It's okay, Ethan said softly. "I won't hurt you." He didn't know why he said it, but the words seemed to calm her. The girl blinked slowly, then pointed up toward the sky. Tears filled her shining eyes as she whispered a single word. "Mother." Ethan froze. Even though he didn't know her language, he understood that one word perfectly. His heart clenched. She was alone, scared, and searching for her mother. Just a child lost on a planet that wasn't hers. He looked back toward the road, wondering if he should call someone. The police? The army? Anyone. But then he remembered the stories on the news. Strange lights in the sky, meteor showers, government denials. If he told them, they'd take her away. She wouldn't be safe. He didn't know who she was or where she came from, but he knew this. She needed help. "All right," he whispered, taking off his jacket and wrapping it around her small body. "We'll figure this out, kid. You're safe with me." Suddenly the forest filled with a low hum. The air vibrated. Ethan turned toward the sky and saw faint red beams moving through the trees, searchlights and scanning. He ducked behind a fallen log, clutching the girl close. She looked up at him with wide eyes, her body trembling. He could feel her heart racing against his chest. The red lights moved closer, sweeping over the forest floor. He could hear engines overhead, machines, not helicopters. Something mechanical, alien, scanning for heat or movement. The pod behind them sparked and hissed, melting deeper into the ground. Ethan realized they had to move. Whoever or whatever was searching wasn't friendly. He lifted the girl in his arms. She was lighter than air, almost weightless. As he carried her back toward the truck, the ground shook again. Another beam of light swept across the trees, so bright it turned night into day. Ethan stumbled, hiding behind his truck as the beam passed over. Then silence. The light faded. The machines were gone. Breathing hard, Ethan laid the girl gently on the truck seat. She was shivering, whispering something softly in her language, something that sounded like a song. When he looked closer, he saw a small pendant glowing around her neck. It projected a faint image in the air, a woman's face with the same silver eyes calling her name. Lyra. Ethan stared, speechless. The hologram flickered once and vanished. The girl, Lyra, closed her eyes, exhausted. He sat there for a long moment, trying to understand what he had just seen. An alien child, a crash, strange machines searching the forest. None of it made sense. He started the engine, his hands shaking. "Hang on, Lyra," he said quietly. "We'll find your mom. I promise." As he drove into the night, he didn't see the small drone hovering high above the treetops, watching his truck's taillights disappear down the road. Its red lens blinked once before vanishing into the clouds. Ethan thought he was saving a lost child. But that night, under the cold light of the stars, his life and the fate of Earth had already begun to change. Ethan drove through the night, his old truck bouncing on the rough forest road. The alien girl Lyra was sleeping beside him, wrapped in his jacket. Her glowing pendant dimmed and brightened with every breath, like a heartbeat made of light. Ethan kept glancing at her, afraid she might vanish if he looked away too long. The clock on his dashboard blinked past midnight. The town lights were far behind. He couldn't take her home, not with neighbors who loved to gossip and police who asked too many questions. There was only one place left, one no one ever went anymore. His father's old fishing cabin by the lake. Hidden deep in the woods, half broken and forgotten, perfect for hiding something. Or someone. The rain started halfway there, soft at first, then heavy. Thunder rolled in the distance. The girl stirred, whispering in her strange language. Her small hands clutched the pendant tighter, as if it comforted her. "Don't worry," Ethan said softly. "We're almost there." He wasn't sure she understood, but her eyes opened just a little, those silver, star-like eyes. And for a second, Ethan felt something pass between them. Not words, but emotion, fear, sadness, and a little trust. When they reached the cabin, it was dark and silent. The wooden porch creaked as he stepped on it. Inside, the air smelled of dust and rain. Ethan lit an old lantern, the flame flickering weakly. The cabin looked almost the same as when he last visited years ago. Broken furniture, spider webs, and a faded photo of his father on the wall. He laid Lyra gently on the couch, then searched for blankets. She was cold, shivering slightly. He found an old quilt and covered her. The moment he did, her pendant glowed brighter, casting faint blue light around the room. It projected something again, a hologram. Ethan froze. The image showed a tall woman with long, flowing silver hair and eyes just like Lyra's. She was speaking in that same musical language, her voice trembling with emotion. The hologram flickered, but Ethan caught a few clear words. "Lyra, stay safe. Mother is coming." Then it faded out completely. Ethan sat down slowly, staring at the spot where the image had been. "Mother," he whispered. So she really did have a mother somewhere out there. But where? And how could she find her way back? Lyra opened her eyes again, weak but awake. She pointed at the hologram's last spark, then touched her chest. "Mother," she repeated softly. Ethan nodded. "Yeah, your mother. We'll find her. Somehow." He didn't know how those words came out so easily, but deep down he meant them. Outside, thunder cracked again. Ethan went to check the window, and what he saw made his blood run cold. A drone. Small, black, and silent, it hovered above the trees, red lights blinking. It was scanning the forest, slow, methodical, searching. Ethan quickly turned off the lantern and pulled the curtains shut. He peeked through a small crack. The drone passed by but didn't stop. For now, he backed away and grabbed his phone. No signal. He tried again. Nothing. Just static. It was as if something in the air blocked all communication. Lyra sat up weakly. Her pendant flickered faster, reacting to the drone's presence. She looked at Ethan and made a frightened sound. Then, for the first time, she spoke in English, broken, but clear enough to freeze him where he stood. "They come," Ethan blinked. "What did you say?" She repeated, voice trembling. "They come for me." Ethan felt a chill crawl down his spine. Whoever they were, he had no doubt she was right. He knelt beside her. "Then we stay quiet. No lights, no sound. Understand?" She nodded slowly, her glowing eyes filled with fear. Hours passed. Rain kept falling, masking their presence. Ethan stayed awake, his eyes fixed on the window. Every now and then he'd hear distant mechanical sounds, low hums like engines moving through the sky. As dawn approached, Lyra started to breathe faster. Her skin was pale and she looked weaker than before. Ethan touched her forehead. It was burning hot. Hey, stay with me," he said. "What's happening to you?" She pointed weakly at her throat, then at the air. "Not same air," she whispered. Hard but to breathe, Ethan realized with horror. Earth's atmosphere was hurting her. She wasn't built for this world. He ran to his truck and grabbed a small oxygen tank he used for fishing trips. He turned the valve and held the mask near her mouth. She hesitated at first, then took a breath, and her color returned slightly. She smiled faintly. Better. Ethan let out a shaky breath. Good. Don't scare me like that. She giggled softly, a sound so human it broke his heart. Just as things seemed calm again, the radio on the shelf came to life, crackling, then a strange voice echoing through the static. It wasn't a normal transmission. The words were in Lyra's language, but the tone, it was a warning. Lyra's eyes widened. She stared at the radio, then at Ethan. They know, she said quietly. The voice repeated something that made her flinch. She grabbed his hand. Run. Soon. Ethan turned off the radio and looked outside. The rain had stopped. The air was too still, too quiet. And then he saw it, a faint red glow far away through the trees. Not lightning, not fire. Something else. They were coming. He grabbed his keys, heart pounding. Lyra, we have to move again. She stood shakily, clutching his hand. Mother, waiting, she whispered. Ethan nodded. Then let's go find her before they find us. As they ran to the truck, the sky above them flashed with a pulse of red light. The drone had found the cabin. Engines roared in the distance. Ethan hit the gas, tires spinning on the wet mud. Behind them, the cabin exploded in a shower of sparks and blue flame. Lyra looked back, eyes full of tears. Ethan didn't. He just kept driving faster into the unknown. He didn't know where they were going. But he knew one thing for sure. Whatever was hunting Lyra wasn't human, and now neither was his life. The road stretched endlessly under the pale dawn. Ethan's truck rumbled through the misty forest, tires cutting through puddles left by the night's rain. His eyes were red from exhaustion, but he didn't dare stop. Not after what happened to the cabin. Beside him, Lyra sat quietly, her face pale but calm. The morning light shimmered faintly on her blue skin. She was holding the glowing pendant again, whispering softly into it as if speaking to someone far away. Her words were soft and musical, like a lullaby from another world. Ethan didn't understand the language, but he could feel her pain. That small girl had lost everything, her home, her family, her world, and now she was running for her life on a planet that wasn't hers. He gripped the steering wheel tighter. We'll find a safe place, he said, glancing at her. Somewhere they can't track us. Lyra looked up with her silver eyes. No safe, she said slowly, struggling with the words. They always see, Ethan frowned. Who are they, Lyra? Who's chasing you? She hesitated, then lifted the pendant. It projected a flickering hologram, this time of tall, dark figures with glowing helmets and sharp wings made of light. Hunters, she whispered. They take no mercy. Ethan stared at the image, chills running down his spine. Whoever they weren't human. But then, how were Earth's machines working with them? The drones, the scanning lights, they looked like both alien and military technology. Something wasn't right. After hours of driving, they reached a small abandoned gas station near the desert's edge. The sign was broken, half covered in dust. Ethan parked behind it, out of sight. He stepped out, stretching his legs and scanning the horizon. Empty, no lights, no sound, only wind. Inside the truck, Lyra pressed her hand to the dashboard. The screen flickered suddenly, showing symbols and waves of light. Ethan blinked in shock. What did you just do? Listen, she said softly. The radio turned on by itself. A strange static filled the air, then a voice. At first it was garbled, then slowly words formed, not English but Lyra's language. Her eyes widened. Mother, she whispered, tears forming. It's her voice. Ethan leaned closer, trying to catch something, anything he could understand. But the signal was broken and weak. Lyra placed her glowing pendant near the radio, amplifying it slightly. The message became clearer. It was a woman's voice calling out, Lyra, follow the light, the rift, west of the Red Mountains. Then the sound broke into sharp static again. Lyra gasped. She's alive. Ethan felt relief wash through him too. Then we know where to go. Lyra nodded, her eyes shining with hope. But before she could say more, the radio changed again. A second voice cut through the static, cold, harsh, human. This is Agent Keller. Subject E-17 confirmed alive. Pursuing westbound. Orders capture, not kill. Repeat. Capture, not kill. Ethan froze. Keller. The same man who had led the soldiers at the cabin. They were tracking him now. He didn't know how, but they were. He slammed the radio off. We need to move, now. Lyra looked at him with fear. They find again? Yeah, he said, climbing back into the driver's seat. And they're closer than we thought. He started the engine, but before he could drive, a deep rumble echoed from above. He looked up through the windshield, and his heart stopped. A massive aircraft glided through the clouds, black, silent, and sleek. It wasn't a plane. Its wings shimmered with symbols like Lyra's pendant. It was searching. Ethan floored the gas pedal. The truck sped across the dirt road, dust flying everywhere. The aircraft's lights scanned the ground, passing dangerously close. Lyra pressed her palms to the window, her pendant glowing bright. Suddenly she spoke again, her voice strong and strange. Hide us. The air shimmered around the truck. The headlights dimmed. For a few seconds, the entire vehicle seemed to blur into the background, almost invisible. The aircraft's beam passed over and missed them. Ethan's jaw dropped. What did you just do? Lyra looked drained, her body trembling. Light bend, she whispered. But hard. I tired. She collapsed back into the seat. Ethan reached out to steady her, his heart racing. You saved us, he said softly. But don't do that again unless you have to. He drove until the aircraft vanished behind the mountains. The sun began to set, painting the desert orange and gold. By the time they stopped again, night had returned. Ethan built a small campfire near a rocky cliff. Lyra sat beside him, staring into the flames. Lyra, he said after a long silence, your mother's message said something about a rift. Do you know what that means? She nodded slowly. Door between worlds. I come from there. But broken now. Broken? Ethan asked. Lyra looked up at the sky, her silver eyes reflecting the firelight. The hunters break it. They follow. They want power. Power. She touched her chest where the pendant hung. This had opened door. They want it. Ethan stared at her, realization dawning. The pendant wasn't just a necklace, it was a key. A key to another world. He rubbed his face tiredly. So they'll never stop until they have it. Until they have you, Lyra looked down sadly. They hurt everyone, even you. You should leave me. Ethan shook his head firmly. Not happening. You're not alone anymore, Lyra. She stared at him for a long moment. Then slowly she smiled. Thank you, Ethan. The night deepened. Crickets sang in the distance. For a while it felt almost peaceful. But then, the radio in the truck came alive again. Only this time there was no voice. Just a strange melody, soft, haunting, and echoing like it came from space itself. Ethan stood still, listening. Lyra looked frightened. That not my mother, she whispered. That, them. The fire flickered violently as if reacting to the sound. The melody grew louder, sharper, until the truck's headlights flicked on by themselves. On the horizon, Ethan saw red lights moving, slow, steady, and getting closer. He grabbed Lyra's hand. Run! They ran up the rocky path, the strange music following them like a whisper in the dark. The ground trembled as the red lights grew brighter. The hunters had found them again, and this time, they weren't alone. The night wind screamed through the desert, carrying sand and fear with it. Ethan ran up the rocky path, holding Lyra's small hand tightly. Behind them, the red lights grew brighter, like angry eyes glowing in the dark. The sound of engines echoed across the cliffs. Keep running! Ethan shouted, his voice breaking from exhaustion. Lyra stumbled but kept moving. Her pendant glowed faintly against her chest, pulsing like a heartbeat. The strange melody from the truck radio still hummed in the air, low and haunting. It wasn't just sound anymore, it felt alive, crawling into Ethan's ears, whispering thoughts that weren't his. Give her to us. He stumbled for a second, gripping his head. The voice was inside his mind now, cold, metallic, and full of hunger. She doesn't belong to you. Give her to us. Ethan forced himself to focus. Get out of my head, he yelled, his voice echoing against the rocks. Lyra looked up at him, scared. They speak in mind, she said. They try take you too. He nodded, breathless. Not gonna happen. They reached the top of the hill and looked down at the valley below, a dark stretch of sand and stone. Ethan spotted a narrow canyon cutting through the desert. We can hide there, he said. But before they could move, a beam of red light shot across the sky, burning into the rocks near them. The explosion threw both of them to the ground. Ethan's ears rang. He looked up and saw them, the hunters. They descended from the clouds like shadows made of fire. Tall black suits of armor glowed with red veins of energy. Their faces were hidden behind sharp helmets with vertical lights that flickered like eyes. There were 3 of them, floating a few feet above the ground, their feet leaving no trace in the sand. Lyra whimpered and hid behind Ethan. "They find us," she whispered. "They always find." Ethan stood clutching a rock in his hand like it was a weapon. "You're not taking her," he growled. The lead hunter tilted his head, voice cold and echoing. "Human interference detected. Surrender the subject." Ethan's heart pounded, but he didn't back down. "She's just a child." "She is property," the voice said flatly. "She holds the key of passage. Return it and your death will be painless." Ethan gritted his teeth. "Not happening." The hunter raised his hand. Red energy gathered around his fingers, humming like electricity. Ethan grabbed Lyra and rolled behind a boulder as the beam shot forward, cutting the stone in half like paper. Sand exploded into the air. "Run!" Ethan yelled again, pulling Lyra toward the canyon. They slid down the rocky slope, stumbling over stones and dust. Behind them, the hunters followed, silent, relentless. Ethan's lungs burned. He could feel the heat from their weapons getting closer. "Lyra, can you use that light thing again?" he shouted. Lyra shook her head, panting. "Too tired. No power left. Then we make our own luck." They reached the canyon floor and followed it deeper until the walls rose high on both sides. Ethan spotted a narrow cave entrance and pushed Lyra inside. He followed, crouching low in the dark. The hunters landed outside. Their red glow filled the canyon like a bloody sunrise. One of them scanned the walls, the beam of light moving slowly toward the cave. Ethan held his breath. Lyra pressed against him, trembling. The pendant on her chest glowed faintly again, reacting to the energy outside. The light grew stronger. Too strong. "Lyra," Ethan whispered. "You're glowing." She covered it with her hand, but the light only got brighter. The hunters turned toward the cave instantly. "Target reacquired," one of them said. Ethan grabbed a piece of metal pipe from the cave floor and looked at Lyra. "When I tell you," she shook her head, tears in her eyes. "No, they kill you. Not if you move fast enough." The first hunter stepped inside, tall as the ceiling, his red light filling the space. Ethan swung the pipe as hard as he could. It hit the hunter's chest with a clang and did nothing. The hunter grabbed Ethan by the arm and threw him against the wall. Pain shot through his side. Lyra screamed, and suddenly the air around her exploded with blue light. The pendant flared like a miniature sun, throwing the hunters back with a wave of energy. The cave walls shook. Rocks fell from above. Ethan coughed, covering his head as dust filled the air. Lyra stood in the middle of it all, glowing so bright her body looked transparent. Strange symbols spun around her, floating in the air. "Lyra," Ethan shouted. "Stop, you'll bring the cave down." Her voice was echoing, doubled, like something ancient spoke through her. "You hurt him. You will not take me." The hunters tried to rise, but their armor cracked under the energy. One of them disintegrated in a burst of red flame. The others retreated, vanishing into the darkness outside. The light faded and Lyra collapsed. Ethan rushed forward, catching her before she hit the ground. Her body felt ice cold now. Hey, stay with me," he whispered, shaking her gently. She opened her eyes weakly. "I can't control it." "You did good," he said softly. "You saved us." She smiled faintly, then fell asleep in his arms. Ethan carried her out of the cave when the shaking stopped. The sky was lighter now, dawn again. He looked back at the canyon. Smoke rose from where the hunters had stood. He didn't know what Lyra had done, but he knew it wasn't over. The voice in his head whispered again, fainter this time. "You can't run forever, human." Ethan looked up at the sky where a faint red glow lingered among the clouds. "We'll see about that," he muttered. He placed Lyra gently in the truck and started the engine. As the sun rose, he drove west toward the mountains, toward the rift her mother had spoken of. He didn't know if they'd make it. He didn't know if anyone could stop the hunters, but he did know one thing. He'd protect Lyra with his life, even if it meant fighting the whole galaxy. The sun burned high above the desert, painting everything in shades of gold and fire. Ethan's old truck rattled down the dusty highway, leaving behind a long trail of sand. The radio was silent now. Even the strange voices had stopped. For the first time in days there was peace, but it felt too quiet. Lyra slept beside him, her small hand clutching the glowing pendant. Every few minutes it flickered softly like it was breathing. Her blue skin had grown pale, her energy fading fast. She wasn't meant for this world, and Ethan could see it. Every breath she took seemed heavier. He looked at her and whispered, "Hang on, kid. We're close." He didn't know how close. The message from Lyra's mother still echoed in his head. Follow the light, the rift, west of the Red Mountains. After hours of driving, the mountains appeared on the horizon. They weren't like any normal range. Red stone cliffs that seemed to shimmer slightly like heat rising from metal. As they drew nearer, Ethan saw something even stranger. The compass on the dashboard spun wildly. The radio crackled without power. The air itself felt charged, like a storm was waiting underground. Lyra stirred, eyes half open. "We near," she whispered. "The rift. Below." Ethan parked the truck near an old mining site, abandoned, silent, with rusted machines half buried in sand. He helped Lyra out, and together they walked toward a large pit surrounded by rocks that glowed faintly blue. "This is it?" Ethan asked, scanning the area. "Doesn't look like much." Lyra nodded weakly. "It's sleeping. Needs power." She touched the pendant, and light spilled from her hand. The ground trembled. The sand shifted, revealing old alien markings etched into the earth, spirals, stars, and strange letters glowing the same color as her eyes. A low hum filled the air. Ethan stepped back as the pit began to pulse with light. "Lyra, what's happening?" She looked at him with a faint smile. "Door waking up." Before Ethan could say anything, the air split open. A vertical crack of blue energy appeared above the pit, stretching taller and taller until it became a swirling gateway, like a storm made of light and wind. Through it, Ethan saw flashes of another world, towers made of crystal, oceans of silver clouds, and two suns burning on the horizon. He couldn't believe his eyes. "That's your home?" Lyra nodded, tears welling in her silver eyes. "Illyria, my world." For a moment, Ethan felt awe, peace, even hope. But that feeling shattered when a low rumble echoed behind them. Engines. He turned and saw black vehicles racing across the sand. Military ones. Lyra's glow dimmed. "They find us again." Dust clouds rose as the truck surrounded the mining site. Men in armored suits jumped out, rifles pointed, and leading them was a man in a dark coat with silver eyes cold as steel. Agent Keller. Ethan stepped in front of Lyra. "You're too late, Keller." "She's going home." Keller raised his hand, signaling the soldiers to hold fire. "You don't understand what you're doing, Ethan. That creature is not a child, it's a weapon. That portal could destroy half the planet." "She's not a weapon," Ethan snapped. "She's scared. She just wants to go home." Keller sighed, his voice calm but deadly. "You think I want to hurt her? We've seen what her kind can do. Whole cities vanished because of that technology. If she opens that rift, we could lose control of our reality." Ethan shook his head. "You don't know her like I do." Keller's tone hardened. "You've been infected, Ethan. The pendant's energy, it's changing you. We can help both of you, but you have to hand her over." Ethan hesitated. His hand tingled where Lyra had touched him days ago. The small glowing mark on his skin had grown brighter lately. But he ignored it. "No, I promised her I'd protect her. You'll have to shoot me first." Keller's eyes narrowed. "If that's what it takes." The soldiers raised their weapons. Lyra stepped forward, shaking but defiant. She held up the pendant, and her voice rang out, strong and echoing. "No more." The air exploded with blue light. The ground cracked as the rift flared wider. Soldiers stumbled back, shielding their faces. Keller shouted, "Contain it now!" But it was too late. The portal roared, sending out waves of energy that twisted the sand into glass. Ethan grabbed Lyra's hand and pulled her back, but the light caught them both. For a brief moment, he saw two worlds overlapping, Earth and Illyria, blending like reflections in shattered water. He heard voices, millions of them, whispering from the other side. Some sounded human, some didn't. Then everything went silent. Ethan opened his eyes to find himself lying on the ground. The air smelled burnt. The trucks were gone, thrown across the desert like toys. Soldiers lay unconscious. The rift was still there, spinning slowly, now stable. Keller struggled to his feet, blood on his face. "You don't know what you've done," he said, voice trembling. "You've opened the bridge." Lyra looked toward the portal. "My mother. She's coming." And then the light inside the rift changed from blue to gold. A tall figure stepped out, surrounded by waves of glowing mist. Ethan's breath caught. It was her, the woman from the hologram, the Queen of Illyria. She was radiant, her silver hair flowing like liquid light. Her presence made the air shimmer. She looked at Lyra first, her face full of love, then at Ethan with sadness. "You protected my daughter," she said softly, "and for that I owe you more than words." Keller raised his weapon. "You can't cross here. You'll destroy the balance." The Queen raised her hand and Keller froze mid-step, his gun suspended in the air. "Your kind took from us what was not yours," she said coldly. "You will not take her again." She turned to Lyra. "Come, my child." Lyra ran into her arms, tears streaming down her face. "I missed you, Mother." The Queen smiled faintly. "And I missed you, my star." Ethan felt warmth in his chest, a mix of joy and heartbreak. But as he watched them, the mark on his hand began to burn. He looked down. It was glowing like a star. The Queen noticed it too. Her expression changed. "The key has chosen you," she whispered. Ethan frowned. "What do you mean?" Before she could answer, the sky above them cracked with thunder. Red light filled the air. The hunters had returned, dozens of them descending from the clouds. The Queen's eyes hardened. They found the breach. She placed her hand on Ethan's chest. "You must live. What happens next will decide the fate of both our worlds." The rift pulsed again as the hunters roared overhead. Ethan reached out for Lyra, but she was already fading with her mother into the light. And then, everything went white. The desert sky burned like a storm of fire and stars. The rift still shimmered above the ground, a swirling doorway of gold and blue light. Ethan lay half buried in the sand, his body trembling from the shockwave. The world around him had fallen silent, too silent. Even the wind was afraid to move. Then he heard it, the low hum of energy pulsing from the sky. When Ethan lifted his head, he saw them. Dozens of hunters descending from the clouds like falling meteors. Their armor glowed red, their wings crackled with light, and their weapons hummed with deadly power. The Queen of Illyria stood tall in front of the portal, her silver hair flowing like starlight in the desert wind. Lyra clung to her mother's arm, eyes wide with fear. But the Queen's face was calm, too calm, like someone who had faced wars across galaxies before. Ethan forced himself up, clutching his ribs. "We have to run," he shouted. But his voice was drowned by the rising thunder in the air. The hunters formed a circle around them, their red lights cutting through the dust. One of them spoke in a deep metallic tone that shook the ground. "Queen of Illyria, you have broken the seal. Return the key and surrender the child." The Queen raised her hand. "You dare threaten my blood on her own soil?" Her voice wasn't loud, but it carried power. The air vibrated with every word. The hunters lifted their weapons. The sky cracked with lightning. Ethan pulled Lyra behind a rock as the first beam fired. It struck the sand and exploded into a wave of red fire. The Queen moved her hand in a smooth motion, and the flames bent around her like glass shattering against invisible walls. Then she raised her arm high and light erupted from her palm. It was not fire, not energy, it was pure creation. The blast tore through the desert like a hurricane. Hunters were thrown in every direction, their armor melting into dust. The ground split open, glowing with veins of blue light. Lyra cried out, "Mother, stop. You'll destroy everything." The Queen's face softened for a moment. She looked at her daughter, then back at the sky where more hunters poured through. "If I do not fight, they will take your world too." Ethan stumbled forward, shielding his face from the light. He shouted, "Then let me help." The Queen turned to him, her golden eyes piercing through the chaos. "You cannot fight them. Your body is still fragile." But Ethan lifted his arm, and the mark on his hand left by Lyra glowed brighter than ever. Streams of light flowed from it, swirling up his arm and into the air like living fire. The Queen's eyes widened. "The key has awakened in you." Ethan looked down at the glowing mark, his voice shaking. "What does that mean?" "It means," she said softly, "you are no longer just human." Before he could speak again, a red beam struck the ground between them, sending him flying backward. The hunters had regrouped. Keller, the human agent, appeared among them. His armor cracked, but his eyes burning with fury. "You don't understand," Keller shouted, holding up a glowing device. "That rift isn't just a door, it's a wound. The longer it stays open, the more both worlds will bleed." The Queen glared at him. "You call it a wound because you do not understand creation. The bridge between worlds was meant to connect, not destroy." Keller aimed his weapon. "You're going to kill us all." Before he could pull the trigger, Ethan stepped between them. The light on his hand pulsed again, stronger now. "Stop, all of you." The energy from his body burst outward, freezing everything for a moment. The wind stopped. The hunters paused mid-strike. Even the light from the rift flickered. Ethan's voice echoed, strange and layered. "I can feel it. Both worlds. Pulling at each other." He turned to the Queen. "If we don't close this soon, they'll both collapse." The Queen stared at him, then nodded slowly. "You can feel the balance. The key chose well." "I don't understand," Ethan said, trembling. "I'm just a man." "You were," the Queen said. "Now you are a bridge." She extended her hand toward him. "Together we can close it, but only if you trust me." Ethan looked at Lyra. She nodded weakly, tears shining in her eyes. "Please, help us." He took the Queen's hand. The moment their palms touched, the world changed. Light surged through the ground, connecting them to the portal. The rift pulsed faster and faster, glowing white-hot. Ethan felt the power of two worlds flowing through him. Stars, storms, memories of places that didn't exist on Earth. His mind filled with images, floating cities, silver oceans, people made of light and shadow. Then came pain, burning, endless pain, as if his body was being torn apart and rebuilt at once. The Queen's voice echoed in his mind. "Hold on, human. You are stronger than you think." The hunters charged one last time. Keller screamed something, but his voice was swallowed by the storm of light. Ethan saw them dissolve, red armor melting into nothing as the portal swallowed their energy. The desert shook like an earthquake. The rift began to shrink, folding in on itself. The Queen's form flickered, half in this world, half in the next. She turned to Lyra, her voice breaking for the first time. "My child." "I cannot stay," Lyra reached out. "No, don't go again." The Queen smiled sadly. "You must stay here. The key will protect you, and him." She looked at Ethan one last time. "You are not done, Bridgemaker. The mark you carry will open again when the stars call for war." And then, in a flash of golden light, the Queen stepped back into the closing rift. The air rippled and the portal sealed with a soft whisper, like the sound of a sigh fading into eternity. Silence. The sky cleared. The desert was calm again. No more fire, no more hunters. Only sand, stars, and the wind. Ethan fell to his knees, exhausted. The mark on his hand still glowed faintly, pulsing in rhythm with his heartbeat. Lyra ran to him and hugged him tightly, sobbing. "She's gone." Ethan held her close. "No," he whispered. "She's out there, watching." They stayed that way for a long time under the open sky, two small figures alone between worlds. The first light of dawn touched the horizon. For a moment, Ethan thought he saw something, just a shimmer in the distance. A woman's silhouette made of light smiling before fading with the rising sun. He didn't know what would come next, but deep down he felt it, the Queen's last words echoing in his heart. The war among the stars has only just begun. The desert was quiet again, too quiet. Where moments ago the sky had roared with storms of fire and light, now there was only calm. The rift was gone, its last golden shimmer fading into the morning sun. The hunters were dust, the machines silent. Only two figures remained among the wreckage, a man and a child. Ethan sat on the sand, the wind tugging at his torn clothes. The mark on his hand still glowed faintly, a soft rhythm like a second heartbeat. His mind felt heavy, full of voices and memories that weren't his. He saw flashes whenever he closed his eyes. Lyra's world, her people, her mother's voice whispering words he didn't yet understand. Beside him, Lyra lay still, eyes closed. She looked peaceful, but her skin had turned pale silver, like light trapped beneath glass. Ethan shook her gently. "Lyra? Come on, wake up." No answer, only the sound of wind brushing across the dunes. He felt his chest tighten. "Don't do this to me now. Not after everything." He lifted her in his arms. Her pendant had stopped glowing, its crystal dull and cold. For the first time since he found her, there was no light, no magic, just silence. Ethan closed his eyes, holding her close. "You did it," he whispered. "You found her. You saved everyone." A tear slid down his cheek and landed on her pendant. The crystal flickered just once. Then again Ethan froze. Slowly the pendant warmed in his hand. Light began to swirl inside it, faint at first, then brightening until it painted their faces gold. Lyra's eyes fluttered open. "Ethan," she whispered weakly. He laughed shakily, relief flooding his chest. "Hey, kid, you scared me half to death." Lyra smiled faintly. "Mother gone?" Ethan nodded. "Yeah, but she's safe, and so are we." She touched his glowing hand. Her small fingers tracing the symbol burned into his skin. "She left you something? What do you mean?" Lyra closed her eyes and whispered something in her own language. The mark on Ethan's hand flared brighter, and suddenly his vision filled with light. He wasn't in the desert anymore. He was standing in a vast empty space filled with stars, like being inside the heart of the universe. And there she was, the Queen of Illyria, her form made of light, her eyes gentle but powerful. "Ethan," her voice echoed in his mind, "you carry the bridge now. The key has chosen you because you did what few humans ever do. You protected something you didn't understand." Ethan felt small before her. "Why me?" "Because compassion," she said, "is rarer than power. You proved that your kind still remembers it." She raised her hand and a small orb of light floated between them. Inside it, Ethan saw galaxies spinning, worlds shimmering, hundreds of them. "The hunters are not gone," she continued. "They are fragments of something greater, something ancient. They seek to consume the bridges between worlds, and now that the rift has awakened, they will come again." Ethan's throat tightened. "What do you want me to do?" "Prepare your world," she said. "Teach them that they are not alone. When the time comes, the key will guide you. Lyra will show you the way." The light began to fade. Her last words were soft like the wind. "You are not just a protector, Ethan, you are the beginning." Then everything went dark again. Ethan gasped as he opened his eyes. He was back in the desert, the mark on his hand glowing steady and strong. Lyra was watching him quietly. "She talked to you," she said. "Didn't she?" He nodded. "Yeah, she did," Lyra smiled. "Then it begins." Days later, the world still didn't know what had happened in the desert. The government said it was a meteor crash. No one mentioned the strange lights, the missing soldiers, or the sudden electromagnetic storm that wiped out all signals for miles. The desert was closed off. Unsafe, they said. But Ethan knew the truth. He and Lyra had moved into a small cabin far from town, the same cabin that once burned. He rebuilt it stronger this time with solar panels and a radio that hummed with faint alien frequencies only Lyra could understand. She was growing stronger every day. Her skin shimmered brighter, and she could speak English better now. She laughed sometimes, though her eyes often looked up at the stars, searching. One night, as the moon rose high, Ethan sat outside staring at the mark on his hand. It had started to change. Lines of light spreading slowly up his arm, forming patterns like circuits. When he pressed his palm to the ground, the earth responded, a faint pulse as if it recognized him. Lyra stepped out quietly, holding 2 mugs of cocoa. "Still awake?" Ethan smiled. "Couldn't sleep. The stars are too loud tonight." Lyra tilted her head, smiling softly. "You can hear them now." He nodded. "Yeah, and they're not just stars. They're signals. Someone's out there." She looked up too, her eyes glowing faintly. "Mother said the bridges must wake." One by one, Ethan took a deep breath. "And you think it's starting already?" Lyra nodded. "The key inside you is calling them. Other worlds hear it. They will come." Ethan chuckled softly. "Let's hope they're friendly." Lyra's face grew serious. "Not all will be." For a moment, silence filled the air again. The fire crackled between them. Then Lyra reached out and placed her hand over his. The mark pulsed once, spreading warmth through both of them. "You are part Illyrian now," she said gently. "Mother gave you the gift." "What gift?" Lyra looked into his eyes. "The power to connect hearts across worlds, to see truth beyond fear." He didn't fully understand, but somehow the words made sense. He could feel it, the invisible thread between him, Lyra, and something vast beyond the stars. They sat together until dawn. When the sun rose, Ethan noticed something new on the horizon. 3 faint trails of light in the sky descending slowly, silently. Not meteors, not planes. Something else. Lyra stood, her pendant glowing again. "They come," she said softly. Ethan rose beside her. "Friends?" She didn't answer. Her silver eyes reflected the dawn. "We'll find out soon." He looked down at his glowing hand one last time, feeling the pulse of something ancient and alive beneath his skin. Then he smiled, a calm determination in his eyes. "Whatever comes," he said, "we face it together." And as the first of the lights touched the earth, the desert wind whispered, almost like a voice carried from the stars. The bridge is open,